For decades, global strategy seemed clear, right? Open borders, endless free trade.
That was the dream, yeah.
But a new analysis we've looked at suggests something different, that only tough, decisive action and real American strength can actually stop a dangerous geopolitical divide from setting in.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into a huge shift, a really monumental one. The end of that post-Cold War consensus and, frankly, the chilling return of raw great power competition.
Yeah, chilling is the right word. So our sources today, they give us sort of a two-sided picture of this emerging world. First, we've got these detailed reports really mapping out the new geopolitical reality, the painful, kind of shocking return of a modern Iron Curtain across Eastern Europe.
It really feels like that on the ground there. And
Second, we have these deep financial analyses. They detail the structural advantages that keep the United States exceptional, economically resilient, and crucially, able to respond assertively to this threat.
Okay, so our mission for you, the listener, is to cut through maybe some wishful thinking and get down to the necessary calculus here.
Right.
We're looking at why policies that prioritize clear national interests, we're talking tough trade measures, demanding accountability from allies, projecting strength, why these are absolutely essential right now.
And we'll pull out the statistics, the key geopolitical facts that really matter for U.S. security and its, long-term economic standing.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start where those alarm bells are ringing loudest. Eastern Europe. The Russian-Ukrainian conflict wasn't just some isolated incident, was it?
No, not at all. It really marks the decisive start of a new competitive era. This division forming between the West and Russia. It's less about physical walls this time.
More about heightened military tensions, economic splits.
Exactly, and deep ideological divides. It really is, to borrow that phrase from our sources, a new Iron Curtain.
And what's fascinating, or maybe sobering, is that for the nations right there facing Russia, this curtain, it never really lifted, did it?
That's what they'd say. For the Polish people, historical memory is current policy. One source puts it starkly. The Iron Curtain still endures nowadays. It just moved eastwards.
And that's not just history talking. It drives a powerful political consensus today, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Polish political elites, right across the spectrum, they're united by this intense anti-Russian feeling.
Which is fueled by
hundreds of years of shared conflict and this deep-seated belief that Russia always deals with Poland from a position of superiority, using fear as the main strategy.
And that fear isn't abstract. It's grounded in what's happening now.
Right now, Russia doesn't just rely on tanks and troops. They use constant hybrid operations.
Like disinformation?
Sophisticated disinformation campaigns, yeah. And deliberately destabilizing actions, like orchestrating migration crises at the Polish-Belarus border, trying to create chaos, drain resources.
When you're under that kind of constant pressure, neutrality just isn't really an option, is it?
Not a viable one, no. And you see that need for a strong, unwavering allied defense right across the region.
Look at the Czech Republic. They had leaders like former President Zeman, who initially kept a pretty pro-Russian stance.
They did, but that changed dramatically in 2021.
What was the catalyst?
The big turning point was the Verbitis explosion case back in 2014. It came out that Russian GRU agents, that's their military intelligence, were directly involved.
Involved in what?
In blowing up an arms depot on Czech soil. Killed 2 people.
Wow. That's not espionage.
No, it's state-sponsored terrorism, a direct assault on their national security. The Czech government realized then, their previous policy of engagement, it was just naive.
And the reaction was pretty immediate.
Swift and definitive. The Czech Republic, along with the U.S., was one of the very first countries Russia slapped on its official list of enemy countries. That was back in May 2021.
And despite maybe some internal political noise, the government's held firm.
Yes. They've stayed a reliable NATO partner, shown huge solidarity with Ukraine. It's quite a turnaround.
Then there's Finland, a country almost defined by its strategic neutrality for decades.
A classic case. But Russia's invasion of Ukraine, that was a complete watershed moment for them.
It brought back old fears.
Immediately recalled the trauma of the Winter War, 1939-1940. This historical memory, this fear of being crushed between great powers. Our sources call it deeply rooted in the Finnish soul structure.
That's powerful language.
It is, and it explains why in 2023, Finland made that huge decision to join NATO.
Which dramatically expanded the alliance eastward. right? Along that massive border with Russia, over 1,300 kilometers.
Exactly. And when stable, traditionally neutral countries like Finland feel forced into such a profound security shift.
It sends a message.
A really unmistakable signal to the world. The time for, let's say, soft diplomacy and wishful thinking about global harmony is over. Strength has to be met with strength.
Which brings us directly to the role of the United States. If our allies are facing this clear and present danger,
then the U.S. has to ensure the alliance system, NATO, is ready, capable, and, importantly, financially committed to meeting the threat.
and according to the analyses we looked at, that requires decisive American leadership. Leadership that demands tangible results.
Okay, let's talk about that leadership approach. Our sources point to a strong, pretty aggressive push for NATO allies, not just to meet the current 2% defense spending targets,
But to go beyond that, significantly.
yeah. We saw reports of talks where officials actually discussed a potential goal of raising total NATO spend to a whopping 5% of GDP.
5%, that's huge.
It is. And that 5% wasn't just defense spending either. It included 3% on defense, yes, but also an additional 2% on critical infrastructure.
Ah, so it's a broader view of security.
Right. It signals a fundamental shift. The U.S. basically insisting that commitment to collective defense has to be proportional to the escalating threat. One commentator cited in the material even called the leader the head coach of NATO.
Implying strong management demanding performance.
Exactly. High performance needed. And that assertive, results-driven style, it extended directly to checking Russian influence, too.
Wow.
Several reports we analyzed really emphasized the hardline stance taken towards Russia. One source, quoting a political spokesperson, actually claimed the U.S. leader at the time was the only president this century who has held Russia in check.
Strong words. Did that translate into action?
Well, we saw that hardline stance turn into specific economic action. Reports confirmed the previous administration was sending a strong message to NATO allies.
Especially in Europe.
Especially in Europe, yes. To stop buying Russian oil. This wasn't just talk. It was using economic leverage to try and defund Russian aggression.
And the thinking behind that.
Experts analyzing this approach stress that this kind of hardline posture actually provides hope for genuine peace negotiations down the line, but only because the U.S. signals it's absolutely unwilling to settle on a bad deal.
Peace through strength, essentially.
That's the core philosophy, yeah. Lasting peace comes from demonstrated strength, not from weak accommodation.
And this framework, demanding results, wasn't just about NATO, was it?
No, it extended elsewhere. U.S. officials also saw momentum, particularly after the Israel-Hamas ceasefire, to expand the Abraham Accords.
Pursuing normalization with Saudi Arabia, other Arab states.
Exactly. Building that stability is seen as critical for projecting global power effectively.
And this connects to a larger strategy. I saw mentions of IMEC.
Yes, potentially reviving the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, or IMS. It's a huge infrastructure project.
Remind us what that is.
It's a proposed vast shipping and rail connection designed to physically link India with Europe, crossing right through the Middle East.
And the geopolitical goal there.
It's pretty explicit. This corridor is designed to bypass and counter Chinese influence in global supply chains.
So securing regional stability, getting allies on board, that's the prerequisite for these big projects.
Absolutely. You need that stability to launch ambitious initiatives that directly compete with China's global plans, like the Belt and Road.
Okay, but let's pause for a second. None of this assertiveness, this demanding results, this global strategy, none of it works without the foundation, right? The economic power of the U.S.
That's the bedrock. Absolutely. The indispensable foundation of U.S. exceptionalism that actually enables this demanding posture.
And the numbers here are pretty staggering when you look at them.
They really are fascinating, and they illustrate real power. Take the U.S. dollar's dominance. It's just unparalleled.
How unparalleled?
U.S. dollar assets make up 58% of all global foreign currency reserves. 58%. The euro, the next biggest, is only at 20%.
Huge gap. And what about debt?
Globally, 64% of the world's debt is denominated in U.S. dollars, and that figure is up significantly from about 50% just over a decade ago, back in 2010.
So what does that actually mean in practice, that dollar dominance?
Well, it confers what economists sometimes call an exorbitant privilege. In real terms, it means the U.S. can finance these consistently large deficits at incredibly low costs.
A structural advantage no one else really has.
Exactly. No other economy enjoys that to the same degree. It makes the nation uniquely resilient to global economic shocks. And crucially, it gives the U.S. the leverage to impose really crushing sanctions on competitors like Russia or China.
So foreign policy can be backed by serious financial muscle.
You got it. And that economic strength, it's dramatically boosted by energy independence.
Right. The U.S. can now source basically 100% of its energy needs domestically, moving towards being a net exporter.
Which is a massive, massive change from just 20 years ago when dependency was high.
And that independence is a strategic weapon in itself, isn't it?
A huge competitive weapon. We saw the impact so clearly after Russia invaded Ukraine. European companies, they ended up paying roughly 4 times what U.S. companies did for energy.
4 times. That's crippling.
It creates a debilitating competitive disadvantage for rivals, and it strengthens American manufacturing, American industry globally. Energy independence isn't just, a nice policy goal. It's a cornerstone of national security and economic power.
So this incredibly strong foundation dollar dominance, energy independence, it supports the final critical policy shift that our sources identify.
Which is?
The embrace of economic nationalism. The analysis notes a deliberate move away from those old principles of free trade and relying on multilateral institutions.
Towards what?
Towards the weaponization of trade and finance, and a clear preference for bilateral relations, getting deals done one-on-one.
Okay, so the goal there is pretty straightforward.
Transparent, really. To explicitly prioritize national interests and domestic resilience over that old globalization model focused only on efficiency, sometimes at any cost.
So that means maybe rejecting multilateral deals like the Trans-Pacific Partnership,
Well,
or not relying so much on the WTO?
if those deals are seen as conflicting with strengthening American industry, then yes, that's the shift.
And this is where tariffs come back into the picture.
Exactly. Tariffs are reemerging not just as a defensive shield, but as a deliberate tool for generating revenue and for geopolitical pressure.
And the sources say they're designed differently now.
Yeah, comprehensive tariffs, explicitly designed to make it much harder for foreign companies to dodge the costs through, geographic tricks or relocating assembly slightly.
Sort of closing loopholes.
Right. The goal to ensure that if goods are coming into the U.S., they're paying their fair share to the Treasury, which directly supports the structural advantages we need.
Okay, so let's bring this all together. What does this mean for you listening?
Well, the rise of this new Iron Curtain seems to confirm that the era of, let's call it naive globalism, soft multilateralism, it's over.
The sources really hammer this home.
Yeah.
Structural American strength backed by the dollar, by energy independence, by assertive nationalistic trade policy, that strength is the absolute prerequisite for effective global leadership.
And for successfully demanding results from alliances like NATO.
It seems clear that tough, decisive action rooted in that domestic power is what this new geopolitical reality demands.
But here's a final thought. The conversation about the new Iron Curtain, it focuses so much on geography, right? East versus West.
Mm-hmm.
But when you consider these overwhelming U.S. economic and energy advantages we've just discussed, maybe the ultimate Iron Curtain now runs somewhere else.
Where are you suggesting?
Well, perhaps it runs not just between nations geographically, but between those nations that proactively protect and prioritize their national interest, and those that passively keep relying on the maybe fading promises of global efficiency.
That's a provocative question. A curtain based on policy approach, not just location.
Yeah, that's the distinction to maybe mull over. Think about how this new, more aggressive focus on domestic strength and assertive trade fundamentally impacts global stability. And maybe specifically, the stability of those who don't have that same structural power. Something to consider going forward.
Definitely food for thought. Until next time, keep thinking critically about the sources.